So, the last presentation for this day about tools for Clean ABAP. So, someone of you already know of them, and we hope to see some more cool stuff. And oh, wonderful, professional. Ben, stage is yours.
Yes, good evening. We will try not to keep you too long from the evening celebration. So, yeah, I'm Björn. I'm the product owner for the ABAP test cockpit at SAP and the main maintainer of the CodePal for ABAP open source project. This is Jörg-Michael. He works in S4 finance and accounting, I think. Exactly. And he's the main maintainer for the ABAP Cleaner open source project. And these are kind of sibling tools. And I'll give a brief overview of what Clean ABAP is. This is not Clean Core. A little bit of confusion over the terminology there sometimes. And then do a short demo with the CodePal checks. And then I will hand it over to Jörg-Michael, who will show you the ABAP Cleaner. All right. Then let's start. Why and what is Clean ABAP and why do we do it? So the terminology originates from this clean code concept, first popularized by Robert C. Martin, where it's about writing testable and maintainable code. And didn't I share it? Ah, I didn't. All right. Just a screen, entire screen. Yes.
You have the only one? Okay.
I don't know what it does if I go to full screen again, so let's just stay here. So Clean ABAP is mainly about writing readable, testable, and maintainable code. So you write the code once, but you will probably have to read it dozens or hundreds of times over its lifetime while you change and adapt and fix bugs and so on. So the main purpose of writing good code should be that the code can be read easily and that you can easily maintain it. And yeah, I mean, whoever works with ABAP and with the legacy project might have at some point stumbled over code like this, right? So you can see on the left-hand side, you're thousands of lines into some giant function group or class, and then you encounter ancient syntax mixed with strange spelling conventions, comments in another language, and so on. So this is not maintainable. This is not clean in the sense that we actually would like to hand this over to someone else or even our future self. So we can talk about what Clean ABAP is all day. So this is the idea of Clean ABAP. Then there's a motivational, aspirational aspect to it, and then there are rules we could describe. And so this is the first of the open source projects here. This is the Clean ABAP style guide, initiated by SAP, but it's a community work. And it's really not meant to be that SAP tries to tell you how to write ABAP. We want to work with the community to decide how we want to write ABAP, right? So there's the style guide. It's the GitHub repository. It has, meanwhile, hundreds of detailed rules where you can decide for yourself if every rule makes sense in your particular context. But in general, this is a recommendation, right? This is an offering to have some place to start, because discussions about conventions and code styles is always, there's not the one true way to do it. And it's often difficult to find a place to start or to find some kind of consensus. And so this style guide is our basis where we say, this is our basis from where we start. And then once you have such a guide, there's always the question, well, what do we do to ensure, to help people learn what it actually implies and how to ensure that people are actually using it? And so the first aspect is, well, they can just read the guide. But I mean, we all know that maybe we don't, especially in a hurry, we won't read pages and pages of descriptions of how to code before we start writing code. So there's a question, how do we integrate this actually into the development process? And the first integration I want to show you is the CodePal project, which is an integration of some of these rules, exactly those that can be automated into your development environment. So there's two versions of this. So this started already a while ago. I think it's 4 years old or maybe even more, where people started a version of this starting with the basis release 740, where you can, and this is a set of ATC checks. So hopefully you already have some kind of quality measures in place. And these are just ATC checks that extend the standard SAP set of ATC checks. And this is the classic version, which you can use in your on-premise versions, starting from 740. And now, at the beginning of last year, we started a new voyage here with its cloud edition, because customers, especially if we propagate this as the way to write modern, new, maintainable ABAP, there should be a way to do this in a steampunk system too, right? And so this is the version that you can install in a steampunk system. It is based entirely on released SAP APIs to do the code analysis, to plug into ATC and so on. And I just want to give you a brief demonstration of how that looks. So I have here a demo system where CodePal has already been installed. So it's just installed like any other ABAP Git package. You just pull it into the system and you activate it. And after you've pulled it into the system, you then have here this set of CodePal, this package of CodePal, which has sub-packages and so on. And there's a checks. But if you don't want to contribute, if you just want to use it, the only relevant thing for you is the check variant that you can actually then use on things. So by default, we deliver only one check variant where every CodePal check is included, except maybe new ones that aren't fully tested yet. And so the newest edition is actually a check that does quite a lot, and I will just add it to this variant now and show you what happens if you execute it. So it also comes with a set of test objects. These are primarily intended to validate the checks themselves in automated testing, but they're also need to use as demonstration examples to get a feel for what this does. So as an ATC check, the purpose here is double. So one purpose is for the developer. As a developer, I can run this on my code and see what it does. And on the but you can also plug it into transport release and so on to track in some kind of centralized quality manner how far away from your imagined code style you actually are. I would not recommend, for example, blocking transports over these problems, but so then every developer will at least see them and they can learn from them. And so the question is, how do I learn just from the check telling me what I did wrong? And that's the neat part about the new cloud version. It doesn't only tell you what you did wrong, it will also tell you how to fix it, at least in a lot of cases. So now I have to wait for the run to finish, which usually shouldn't take that long. In the meantime, if you want to look into this and there it's already finished, or at least it's loading. So we already see, okay, so of course this is a test object, so it has a lot of intentionally bad things or outdated things. In this case, I used an example object that contains language constructs that are still syntactically correct, and there's no intention of turning them into syntax errors or something like that. But there are newer versions available that are more readable, and if we have various versions, usually we want to have a code style that only uses the most recent or the most readable version. So there we see, for example, here's a lot of findings. You can also see many of them have light bulbs, and these light bulbs, as some of you may already know from other contexts, indicate that there's a quick fix available. So for example, this rule here says, hey, there is this new inline construction operation with new. Why don't you use it instead of create object? And especially if I have never used it and I'm now a bit unsure, I don't have to open the documentation and figure out how to actually use new. I can just execute a quick fix here. And then it transforms the former create object and the data declaration up there in one inline declaration that follows the intended code style. The formatting is sometimes a bit off. This is also will be improved in a future version. but currently the formatting is sometimes lost due to technical aspects of how the ATC framework works. So there's this check actually has a lot of different things it can do. So it can create object into new, it can turn certain loop and readable expressions into one line exists expressions. So for example, this here is a loop that's only used to find the first index where a certain line exists in the table. And the check has correctly determined that you can just transform this into a one-line operation where we use the new built-in line index function and so on and so forth. So there's a lot here. There's this modern language check alone has I think we can also look into the configuration a bit here. So everything is also individually configurable. So for example, this check has a lot of this check here. This check doesn't have the configuration, but for example, there's another check for the method signatures where there's a lot of rules about you should use only a returning parameter, you shouldn't use Boolean parameters, and so on and so forth. And you can turn most of these individually on and off if you don't like them. So again, these rules are only recommendations, and many aspects here are configurable if you don't like a certain check at all.
Sorry, you said it's a plugin, but on the other end, it's just an ATC check.
Yes.
So okay, no Eclipse plugin, but just a package you.
Oh yeah, if I said plugin, I meant it's an ABAP Git package or plugin. It lives solely in the backend. There is no front end part to this.
Okay, good.
So the front end is all standard SAP, and we have released over the last years APIs so that customers can build this kind of ATC checks, and it's also actually for us a proof of concept that these frameworks actually work. So this is entirely built on released APIs in the backend. It's only ABAP and mostly only classes and interfaces. So you see the test objects contain a bunch of other things, but the core implementation is in these two other packages, and you see it's only source code and ABAP test cockpit wrapper objects. This is wholly configurable, and if you want to, so you can explore this. As I said, it's a great learning tool, for example, for these new language features. It's also very good to bring people to engage with these rules, even if you at the end decide that some of these rules are not worth it in your case. I think this is very good to get the discussion started. For example, if you add this to the ATC variant that runs by default in your system, many more people will look at this, and they don't have to take the initiative themselves, for example, to read the style guide. But they are brought in that direction by this. As I said, this is an open source project, which not only means it's delivered via ABAP Git, but also that we welcome contributions very much. There are still a lot of rules probably that could be turned into ATC checks that haven't been turned yet into ATC checks. There's always more room for improvement with the quick fixes, because it's a very delicate thing to program them correctly, and there are still ones left that don't work right, or there are ones left where we could do one, but we currently don't have one. So there's probably always more things to do, and perhaps and each of these checks is just a single class. So some of these are very complicated, some of these are very simple, but it's also a good way to engage with the ABAP language on other levels to try to analyze it. So I've never learned more about ABAP than when I tried to actually analyze it on this technical level to determine what's wrong or correct and how to modify it then. So you see, for example, this check is like 400 lines, so it's not that intimidating to actually try to write a check. Yeah, so I invite everyone to check this out. It's installable in every Steampunk system. The cloud version is also installable in a slightly less feature-complete version on 758 systems, and the classic version works down to 740. If you're below that, unfortunately, I have nothing to offer you. And now I will hand over to Jörg-Michael, the ABAP Cleaner, which is the sibling project which lives entirely in the front end.
Perfect. Let's end.
Yes.
Do you have any plans project which is very similar?
Merging, I don't. No, merging, I don't think so. Collaboration, I mean, I think I've looked at them once. I actually haven't studied them in detail, but I'm not against it, but they follow different ideas, I think. So the ABAP open checks are a collection of checks that Lars thought were neat, right? Or other people thought were neat. We have a very narrow focus on implementing the rules from the style guide. So we don't want to let the code pal turn into the all ATC checks you could ever want. We want to focus explicitly on implementing rules from the style guide, and everything else should live in other projects like the open checks, for example. So I also don't want to imply there is some kind of rivalry here. So we implement exactly what's in the style guide. There might be overlap in that respect, but it's fine to use whatever you like. Sure. Yes. It's a standard ATC check. You can request exemptions like for anything else. So
here, this check, for example, you can, in the SAP ATC, you can shut down some.
Yes. So it's fully integrated into ATC. All the configuration that you can do on normal checks, you can also do here. You can modify the priorities. You can request exemptions. You can use pseudo comments. You see here every finding also comes with this.
So that, yeah.
Yes. So it works exactly the same as any other ATC check, and there is no difference.
Great, thanks a lot. Now, just to give me a bit of an idea, when we move to ABAP Cleaner, how many of you have ever used ABAP Cleaner at least once? Okay, that's about maybe a third to half. Okay, great. One quote I usually start with is that a while ago I watched a presentation of one of the Netflix founders who said, if you want to innovate, you have to look at pain. And if we had more time, and I've done that actually in presentations, I would ask you to watch me clean up ABAP code. So I've done that, asking people to watch me for 2 minutes to kind of align assignments and this kind of thing. And believe me, it's painful. And I've never had the impression that there were ABAP developers who couldn't relate to that. So that's actually what's behind ABAP Cleaner. What is ABAP Cleaner? ABAP Cleaner is a configurable tool with the ambition to automate whatever can be automated with respect to ABAP code style. Because doing this kind of work, when you write ABAP code or when you refactor ABAP code, I constantly thought, I'm really sitting in front of the kind of most incredible machine humanity has ever invented, but I have to click the space bars 10 times to align this? No way. So this is what we are trying to do here. And to be a bit more precise, the idea is that in the end, you do one click, right? So like with Pretty Printer, it's not Shift F1, the click is Control 4, and then you will get everything. So everything that ABAP Cleaner can do, which is currently up to 75 cleanup rules, is done on whatever code you select with just one keystroke. But as you already saw in this kind of mission statement, we want this to be configurable. So you are not forced to get a certain code style, but ABAP Cleaner sort of offers this to you. And whatever you or rather your team aligns to, this is what code style you get. But of course, we are not inventing this. We are inspired, of course, by Clean ABAP, by the rules that the community agrees upon in the Clean ABAP style guide, also by the CodePal checks. So a few things that CodePal brings up are cleaned away with ABAP Cleaner before they even come up. And then you see here, these are basically subsets, right? So obviously the automate circle is the smallest. You can check things which you couldn't automatically fix, but it's a very nice one, because if you do that, all that with one click, then obviously you have more time to do the rest, right? The more complex things. You can see here, it's actually deviating a bit from the slide that Björn showed earlier. So this idea to automate whatever can be automated actually makes us exceed a bit the demands of the style guide. So sometimes you can automate something, but in the style guide, there's not a rule that you have to do it this way or you have to do it that way. But I always mention there's a rule in the style guide saying, be consistent. So no matter if you do it this way or that way, it's better to always do it one way, right? So that's why automation sometimes, even the style guide, doesn't really force you into one direction. It nevertheless makes sense to have a team alignment on how you want things. Who is it for? Why should you use it? Well, it's simply basically for every ABAP developer, whether at a customer, a partner at SAP in development or maintenance, in a team or just working on your own, using ADT, hopefully, maybe even using GUI sub GUI still. I'm not going to demo that, but in that case, you just move the code around via clipboard, right? Via clipboard into the tool and then back, which is a bit tedious, but still you save minutes by it, possibly on longer code. And why should you use it? I really believe, and we've seen in practice, that it makes your life easier in all the situations. So it's primarily for you writing the code, just as with Pretty Printer, you write a line, then you press Ctrl+4, or maybe before you save, or whenever you want things to be cleaned up. After it's formatted nicely, of course, for the rest of time, it will always be easier to read for everybody, not just for you. Also, because across your team, you're going to have a much more aligned code style. So it's not like, oh, how does this colleague format the statement? I'm not used to it and it's more difficult to read. It's going to be more uniform in a good way. You won't have to discuss these things so much in code review as you sometimes do, passionately about like, what kind of comment do you want here? You don't have to upskill colleagues about things that you anyway can automate. They just need to know the shortcut. And I always found as well that you have these perfectionists who say, oh, you're actually missing a space here. The indentation is wrong. And you have the non-perfectionists who really don't care about it. And to have peace, it really makes sense to just press one shortcut. And then the perfectionists, like I am one, are happy. And the others actually haven't worked so much for it. And yeah, like I said, with that, you can solve you can dedicate your time to what you really want to do as a developer, right? To think about the algorithm, to think about maybe more complex refactorings that can't be automated so easily. Okay, this is my short slide introduction, but most of the time I really wanted to demo this to you, basically answering the question, where can you get this? How can you use it? And how can you configure it? Where can you get it? That's very easy. So here is the ABAP Cleaner GitHub repository, github.com/sap/ABAP-cleaner. And if you scroll down a bit here, then you will find the requirements installation section. It says you need ADT, and then it gives you a simple link. I copy this link and go to ADT, use help, install new software, paste in the link. Oh yeah, I use a different keyboard layout. So okay, better this way. Here it already comes. That's my window gone. You activate ABAP Cleaner, you click next and finish and so on, follow the process, restart ADT, and then it's installed. So it's absolutely an ADT plugin. And when you have installed it, the way to know you have installed it is that you will see in the source code menu these 3 new menu items. Clean up with automated ABAP Cleaner, clean up with interactive ABAP Cleaner, and show read-in-only preview with ABAP Cleaner. Okay, so now we're coming to how to use it. It's really simple. Let me scroll to this method. Basically, what you do is you just select some code, for example, this statement here. Then you press Ctrl+4, and then the code gets cleaned up. Or let me just select a bit more code, press Ctrl+4, and the whole thing is cleaned up. Or you just don't select anything, you just put the cursor into the method that you're currently in. Ctrl+4 will clean up the whole method with whatever is configured. The same goes, of course, in the declaration section. So if I go into the public section here, press Ctrl+4, then everything will be cleaned up. So it's always one object on your transport. Obviously, you don't want like all 20 methods on your transport, but just the thing that you're working on. Ctrl+4, that's basically already the story. To start with, obviously, you will want to understand a bit better what happens here. So let's look at the interactive cleanup. Actually, I can maximize this a bit. Okay. Now, I will just select everything. That's, of course, always an option. So if you want to clean up all the 35,000 lines of your class, Control-A, Control-4 would do the trick. But let's now go to the source code cleanup with interactive ABAP Cleaner. So what you get now is a diff view, which shows on the left-hand side the incoming code and on the right-hand side the code as ABAP Cleaner would suggest to clean it. And you can see here, it's actually correcting frequent typos. It's here, it says remove the protected section because that's empty. It is removing this exclamation mark. And let's see, oh, here it is kind of completing the data statement with type C length 1, which maybe not everybody does, and replacing this symbolic comparison operator and so on. So you can take a look at what would happen to your code, but you can also influence that. So if I, let me just mark some section in here, then on the right-hand side, you will see the rules, the cleanup rules that were used in this small section that I highlighted are those 4 rules. And you could say, okay, make implicit type explicit. I don't like that, right? So I just deactivate it locally. You see what happens here? It's deactivated, not in general, but just in this place. Maybe for some reason you want to keep it here. Or let me just, yeah, okay, here are these lovely calculation assignment operators. I like them very much. Maybe you don't, just deactivate it in this place, right? Of course, you know that older NetWeaver versions don't support those. So it's important to know that ABAP Cleaner, when you call it from ADT, already knows the ABAP release. So here we have ABAP 8.16. That's, I believe, the newest one. But if you're on an older system, then ABAP Cleaner will automatically realize, okay, this is 755. We don't have calculation assignment operators here, so it doesn't do that, of course. You can actually even manually further restrict that. Maybe you want to kind of downport your code later to an even older release. Then you say, yeah, only do stuff that comply with ABAP 7.50. And you see it automatically deactivates that. So that's how it works. And I have to move this a bit. Yeah. Once you're done with checking whether this is how you want it, then you can simply say apply and close, and all the changes will be in your code. Or you press cancel to kind of discard everything. My guess is that you are going to do this a lot in the beginning, just to make sure ABAP Cleaner doesn't do bad things with your code. And very quickly you will build the trust and see, yeah, this is really good, and I want that. And then you're probably not even going into this menu anymore. You just press Control-4. Then just to mention it, there is a third variant, source code show read-only preview with ABAP Cleaner. That's a very nice idea from the community. So here you can see you don't have the apply button anymore. This is just for you to look what would happen if I ran ABAP Cleaner. In the interactive cleanup, the object gets locked. But sometimes you don't even have the development permission, or somebody else already locks the object. So with this, you could actually call the menu without doing anything. Yeah, and exactly. And one more thing that you can do in this preview, you actually have the menu code from clipboard. So any kind of code from any place could just be pasted in it to see what would happen. What would ABAP Cleaner do with this kind of code? So it's a bit more safeguarded, you could say. That's the read-only preview. Actually, I wanted to guide you to one more thing, which is also a very nice idea from the community. So I just marked everything now. So you see this code has actually been designed to show many, many rules and use. And you can actually, with Control-click, you can navigate to that rule. So with Control-click, I would now go into the configuration for exactly this rule, which was shown here. It's very useful if you work with ABAP Cleaner a lot. Without that, you could always press the configure button. And again, I guess this is something that you will use in the very beginning quite a bit, because with the configure button, you now get a list of all those 75 rules that ABAP Cleaner offers. So here they are. They are kind of grouped into topics like empty lines, spaces, declarations, syntax. Then we have commands, meaning like replacing obsolete commands with more current ones. Pretty printer. So basically, these three things are mimicking what Pretty Printer does. I think you won't be using Pretty Printer anymore if you use ABAP Cleaner because it's kind of included. And a big section on alignment because that's, of course, very tedious to do manually. So that's our sections. And if you press on one of the rules, then on the right-hand side of the screen, you will see more details on that. So a description, obviously, a reference to the style guide, what it says about it, maybe a reference also to the code spell check, and examples which show, again, in this kind of diff view, what is going to happen if you run this rule. And you can also see here, maybe let me look for a better example. Methods, declarations. You always have lots of options here, which allow you to influence the results. So I'm still waiting for the 3 hours presentation in which I could present all those options. But believe me, they all make sense. We've really dug deep here to. So usually when I implement a rule, it's like I first look at hundreds or even thousands of examples to see how do people actually solve this alignment problem. And then usually you come up with options saying, okay, if you prefer this style, then maybe this could help, or this is maybe an exception that some people will like. But we are, of course, also trying to find good defaults. So whatever you configure here, the selection of rules, the detailed options, and so on, everything is stored in one profile. So you see up here, there is a default profile, an essential profile, and then more profiles that you can yourself configure, right? With this copy, delete, rename, and so on. You can import them, export them. You can even configure synchronized folders. So you can kind of share the profile with your team. So maybe your architect defines the cleanup rules that you want to use or the exact configuration, and then you synchronize it so everybody immediately gets this configuration. So everything is stored in profiles. Maybe you have special profiles for special tasks, like special cleanup tasks, where you just want to use a focused use this 3 cleanup rules or whatever. One thing that might also help you quite a bit. One more remark on the profiles. So the default profile is basically activating more or less everything that ABAP Cleaner can offer. The essential profile is, as you can see here, doesn't have everything activated, but rather is limited to those rules that are really demanded by the Clean ABAP style guide. So here you can say, okay, if we want to write ABAP in the style guide sense, then we have to do this. All the rest is maybe optional or has room to discussion. And you see that's about 30 rules out of 75. Please don't miss to look at the others because you will be missing a lot. But that's maybe a starting point if you align with your team on what to do. There's a highlight feature which maybe is interesting as well. So let's say you've last looked into ABAP Cleaner in March and you want to know, okay, what has happened since March? Then you can say, highlight all the features that were added after version 1.14 on 11th of March. And then you get a highlight which shows you, okay, there has been a new option here, and there has been a new rule here, which is the green one, another rule, and so on and so forth. So this is maybe to say, okay, in the meantime, ABAP Cleaner has evolved, and now I want to check with the new rules, what configuration do we want to use here. Let me just very briefly show you a very few of those rules. So there's a lot of exploration that you can do. One thing that we've recently worked on a lot is select clauses. So there are actually even 3 rules for that. How do you align select clauses nicely, right? So select into from where, select from appending. And so this is, first of all, just aligning the main query clauses of the select. And then you can also configure down here, how do you want unions? Does that have to go indented, or is it in the same level? Then if you have larger joins, I personally like this kind of stair layout here for joins. Maybe you don't like it. Then you say, okay, I don't want it in this position. I just shift it to a different position. So you can experiment a bit, right? You can also use this paste button to paste in your own code and then see how would the rule work on your code and find good settings for whatever you need. One recent rule is use camel case for known CDS names. So something like text date is active is very difficult to read, but with camel case it's actually much better to read, right? But you can't get that with Pretty Printer. But ABAP Cleaner is very proud to know the global field names and global CDS view names that we've defined, at least with every update. So you can get this in a much better readable format. And yeah, like I said, replacing old commands like condense with the string function or describe table lines with the lines function, or as Björn also mentioned, replace read table with a table expression. There's sometimes a lot of comment on why this can't be replaced with a table expression. So you can go into detail here. Have fun exploring those rules, finding your settings. Hopefully, I didn't promise too much. Hopefully, we did find good defaults for everything, but you can always change things. So that's how to configure ABAP Cleaner. Now let me quickly go back to the slides. This Devtoberfest session of last September is a more extensive talk on this. So this is more or less 75 minutes on me introducing the functionality. So if this was a bit short, then just make sure you watch it. It's on YouTube. Everything else, of course, is also on the repository. And one remark that I wanted to give about how did ABAP Cleaner evolve so far and how will it evolve? So we really are completely overwhelmed of the community engagement. You see ABAP Cleaner in December 2021 had an inner source phase, which lasted until April of last year. And then it was open sourced. And since then, we really get an inflow of very, very kind and helpful and great community contributions. And you can see here in the colors, there are lots of new ideas. You could automate this cleanup rule. You could maybe add this configuration to meet a different coding style. You could add this to the UI. Then, of course, we get bug reports. Obviously, if you use ABAP Cleaner on a completely different code style, you might get a weird alignment, and we are happy to try to solve that. And yeah, a few duplicates, of course. But you see here, it's like close to 400 issues and feedback. So that's been absolutely great. And also, if you look at the number of cleanup rules, so those first 38 were basically my own contribution. And after that, all the ideas came in from the community. So when we open sourced it, I think we were at 56, and now it's 75. And looking at the repository, there are so many more ideas, just not enough time yet to implement them all. What you will also see is that configuration options per cleanup rule. So obviously, more code styles need more different or more fine-tuned configurations. So this has grown. This does increase a bit the initial effort of configuring it if you want it differently, but I believe you will benefit from it a lot. And obviously, with more code styles, with more configuration variants, you get bugs, but with every bug that we fix, we also reach more stability. And like Björn said, so I'm from financial accounting in S4HANA. We really, really like tests. We don't want to miss a cent anywhere. So, and this is also the spirit in ABAP Cleaner, is all very, very thoroughly tested to make this stable. And how will it evolve? Maybe I won't read this whole slide. It will just get more cleanup rules, more features, more bug fixes, more test coverage. But what is important is one limitation of ABAP Cleaner is it does not do additional backend calls. So we are not querying this signature or this method or this DDIC object. We are just working on what we see. And that's a limitation. It makes ABAP Cleaner very, very fast, but that simply means we can't access other objects. It's also not in scope to do the same on CDS view definitions or whatever you could think of. It's ABAP, mainly maybe EML, maybe even SQL script at some point, but ABAP. And no sub-GUI integration planned. Please move to ADT if you haven't already. And also no, we're not going to embed AI because the idea really is no hallucinations. We want a deterministic cleanup result that you can really rely on. So if you get to know ABAP Cleaner, you will actually not review it anymore to check whether the changes are good, because they really usually are. Maybe in some edge cases, the alignment is not ideal, but you will, at least 99% will be much better. And we don't want you to kind of say, okay, now I've asked ChatGPT to format it. Now I have to kind of review the whole code again. That will have great other use cases, but not this one. Yeah, how can you contribute? Spread the word, report bugs, tell us your ideas, maybe even contribute to development, or even give it a star. I think that's true for all open source projects. We don't know how many people are using it, but just press a button to say, this is useful for me. And then it's kind of visible that people really value this. Yeah, resources you will see in the presentation. Now I believe we have some time for Q&A left before in 15 minutes the closing starts. Good.
So first from my side, very big thanks to you for the presentation and also for doing the job developing this add-on. Who uses this add-on already? And the others? Why not? It's a really cool solution. I really like it. But one slide made me sad. No support for CDS. CDS and annotations is so ugly.
Yeah. So yeah, really the architecture of the project is completely kind of intertwined with ABAP language. But maybe it inspires somebody else to do a kind of project in kind. And actually, I think ADT does have some formatting on CDS.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, but if you use
of the pretty printer.
Okay.
But the
So
Fiori elements annotations, they have no.
Yeah.
They're randomized.
Yeah. So maybe. And that would be a nice start. Yeah.
Yeah.
Configuration folders, I think this is worth to notify for all the people who are willing to implement that.
Yeah, okay. I hope you will show us now the folder option. Me working in a small team, we have set up our rules and placed them here in the folders. But please explain it yourself. You will do better.
Yeah, just very briefly. So as Björn mentioned earlier, ABAP Cleaner works completely locally. So if you change, thanks. Yeah, that was double work. If you change a profile, it will just be stored on your local machine. Nobody will ever know about it. So the workaround is that I guess you all across your organization have some kind of OneDrive, SharePoint, whatever. And with this button here, profiles, folders, you can leverage that and simply select from your OneDrive or whatever, one folder in which you put these profiles, right? So your architect would kind of, or developer lead or whatever, defines the profile and then just exports it. There's also a button to this folder and then it's synchronized. And everybody else also uses this to kind of get this into their ABAP Cleaner. And then one more thing that's maybe important to know, whatever you configure last here, so let's say profile selection, this will always be used for the next automated cleanup, right? So Control-4 will always make use of the last profile. And if that's your synchronized team profile, then you will always get the latest settings of what the team has aligned on. Thanks, yeah. Idea from the community, right? So this was really a, Yeah.
So if I understand it correctly, all these rules are basically optional. So it's up to my colleague if he use them or not.
Right. Yeah.
Is it also possible to make them mandatory, and does it make sense?
I mean, that's exactly where the difference to CodePal lies. That's what CodePal is for, right? You can integrate the ATC checks from CodePal into your transport release, run ATC at transport release, and if you really want, you can set it so no one can release any transports as long as there are CodePal findings.
Yeah,
I would not recommend this for every style rule, but it's definitely possible.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not very familiar with ABAP but if you can compare the tool with ABAP.
Well, ABAP is not integrated in ATC, right? I think it's written in Node.
Okay.
And well, I think there is an ATC integration, which then has to call a Node server so that you then get so ABAP is a third kind of tool.
Yeah.
That's neither primarily in ADT nor primarily in the backend, but standalone.
Perfect. Thank you.
You can see here on the really wanted to show this as well in the resources, right? So we are definitely not the first ones who have given thought to projects that check ABAP code and automate and so on. So like you said, ABAP Lint, ABAP OpenChecks, ABAP Quick Fix. So there are more projects out there, and they also are inspired by each other, which is, I think, a great thing. So yeah. And one more remark, I didn't mention there's also a command line version for ABAP Cleaner. So you can also run it for the command line, from the command line. I'm not at all an expert here, but people have tried to create GitHub Actions workflows from that. And then you can say, if you do your code review on GitHub, then you say you can even only start it if there's no ABAP Cleaner finding. So there are experiments with that. You can this way you could sort of check that a certain profile of cleanup rules was run.
I have a similar question. Can I mark in class an object that it is auto-formatted when I activate it? So I put on top of the class a tag like auto-format, and if I then activate the class, then the rules are applied.
Unfortunately not. So I was assured we've had an issue on that. Like this kind of clean on
you're not the first
right?
to have that idea.
Yeah.
So people really like that idea. There is the issue that ABAP Cleaner is a pure front-end plugin, and activation is a back-end action, right? So and there is currently no hook to hook into the activation on the front end that would be available for external plugins like this one. But I mean, the discussion, I don't think it's off the table. It's just not currently available.
Does this with vertical format or formatting, but then this was not working anymore with your Eclipse, but something works already.
I think people
has changed, then it's not working.
Yeah, I think the point where that plugin is no longer available for external plugins. And I think it's not off the table that there will be, once again, a way to do that, but it's not currently.
I think some have experimented with this. There's a tool to kind of enhance your shortcuts. So you press one shortcut and just Control-4 and Control-S for you. But I mean, this is really the idea, right? Automate everything away that you possibly can. It's yeah. Yeah. No, we're not there yet at this level of automation. Sorry. Yes.
Any further questions? So if there are no further questions, I would close this because we have 8 minutes, I think, to switch the room to the Audimax, to the final call, final presentation. And thanks again for this great presentation.